What's up? What's up? What's up? Welcome back to another episode, another installment, another talk on the book of Psalms, and today we're going into Psalms 3. Um, as always, though, Psalms 3, not Psalms 2. How are you guys doing?
I'm good, man. Just having some mate, chilling, waiting to read Psalms 3.
Oh, okay. I like that. Eager. What about you, Gabe?
Doing well, man. Drinking some coffee here.
Yeah, I got some mate right here. I got lazy to put it in the. I just got the whole.
This guy.
I got too lazy to put it in the what's it called? The thermos.
On the thermos.
So I just said if it gets cold, I can just put it back in the.
Listen.
Heat it up again.
But
one time in Antillian, Brian had this thermos. That was it was leather on the outside, the inside was glass. And so one day his roommate dropped it and it broke. And that was the only thermos that Brian had at the time. And after that, like I don't know, I think there was maybe like 2-3 weeks left of school for that semester. And every time we would have mate inside Brian's room, he'd heat it up in the,
what's it called? Yeah.
I guess it was like a coffee maker, but he just heat up the water and then he would pour it straight from there. That's how he would drink mate.
It works, man. Wait, you weren't the roommate that broke it?
No, I wasn't. I wasn't even roommates with him at the time. That was Jonathan.
Pastor?
Jonathan Carraquillo. Oh. Shout out Jonathan from Antillian if you're watching.
Yeah, wherever you.
Bro, Jonathan, man. Good guy.
So nobody's eating anything, right? I'm assuming we're all just drinking. So I guess we're gonna have to change this to.
We're all fasting, bro.
Yeah, it's Friday. What are you drinking? So yeah, mate with my.
This counts as breakfast coffee, right?
Yeah, we're gonna call it Bible and brunch now. And a light drink, but that's good, guys. It's good to have you guys back on. And so today we're going into Psalm 3. Something that Gabe alluded to earlier. This is a psalm that David wrote when he fled from his son Absalom, right? So I don't know if anybody wants to give us just a Cliff Notes 2 seconds version of what happened there.
So essentially Absalom and his dad, kind of their relationship falls apart. Number one, because Amnon, one of the other sons of David, rapes Absalom's sister, Tamar, and Absalom is really upset that no one has done anything about it, especially King David.
Right.
So he kills Amnon himself, then he goes on the run, then he's welcomed back into the kingdom, and then he just thinks that he could do a better job at leading. So right at this moment that David is writing the psalm, Absalom has led a rebellion against him, and David's on the run. So he's literally with the people who are loyal to him, his soldiers, his generals. The people are kind of split at this moment. So Absalom's in Jerusalem, I believe, and in the royal palace, whereas David's like somewhere in the campo in the mountains.
So that's fascinating, right? Because it wasn't until now you were mentioning it. It would make sense why people would rally behind Absalom versus David, because in their eyes, Absalom's the one that really brought justice for the raping of Tamar, right? Whereas David in the whole story seems to be a lot more passive, right?
But he doesn't just kill the guy who raped Tamar. He kills like a whole bunch of people.
Right. That's true.
Yeah. Well, he kind of is passive throughout, the whole.
Who, David or
David? Right? As you said, he's passive, and I think part of the reason why is because this happens immediately after we're told of the story of David and Bathsheba. And so it seems like he doesn't have, a moral leg to stand on. And,
right. That's true.
He's just letting, things happen out of shame, out of guilt, or out of, embarrassment.
Yeah.
That's a good point, man. It's crazy, man. The parenting, and then he has to flee. I mean, the king flees himself. That's crazy to think, like, vacates the throne, runs for his life again after he's been doing that for years with Saul. So yeah, this is what we're getting into. Thank you for the context, Gabe. Man, I'm just looking here in 2 Samuel about that time with Absalom and how he desired, to come back to his father. I think he was in the same city for 2 years, and David wouldn't see him right after all that.
Right.
And then he begins to, hey, I'm just going to become king, and people would come to see David. And at the city gate, he was standing there, and he would listen to their complaints. And he's like, I got you. I'll be the one that hears you out, because my father's too busy, it seems.
Yeah.
So crazy. So this is David's plea and cry to God in the midst of this family turmoil, which I think a lot of us can relate to, whether that be with our family or friends or churches.
Yeah. So sometimes the silent treatment doesn't work.
Ooh.
Makes things a little worse.
That's a good point. Yeah. And that's a great point, because not addressing something doesn't mean it doesn't go away, right? It's there, and it can lead to more problems if you don't, for me as a 9, that speaks volumes, because it can be so easy to be like, I'd rather not address it. And then hopefully, what is it? If I ignore it, it's going to go away. Right.
Yeah.
And
right.
It doesn't.
And if you do the whole silent treatment thing, it doesn't mean that the other person understands that what they did was wrong,
Right.
In his eyes, I think Absalom, in his eyes, I think did what was right,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially in that culture. That's good. Wow. What a powerful. I'm going to preach about that tomorrow.
Look at this, man. We haven't even gotten into Psalm 3.
We haven't even gotten to Psalm 3, and we have a powerful.
That's how it is with sermons too. You're all excited about the background, and then it's like, oh yeah, I have to preach a sermon now. Yeah. So my first point is like, wait, what the heck?
Yeah.
Super excited about the context, and you get to the actual sermon, it's like, oh, that was
people in the crowd are like, what? That was the introduction.
Yeah.
30 minutes in, it's like, all right, so let's start with the. Now that
we have the great to begin, right? It's like, yo.
All right, so let's get to Psalm 3. We'll just read all the verses here. It says, Lord, how many are my foes? How many rise up against me? Many are saying of me, God will not deliver him. But you, Lord, are a shield around me, my glory, the one who lifts my head high. I call out to the Lord, and he answers me from his holy mountain. I lie down and sleep. I wake again, because the Lord sustains me. I will not fear, though tens of thousands assail me on every side. Probably really true, because Absalom had control of the army. Arise, Lord, deliver me, my God. Strike all my enemies on the jaw. Break the teeth of the wicked. There you go, Brian. From the Lord comes deliverance. May your blessing be on your people. Break. I like.
Se me fue.
Escapó.
Yeah. Dude, honestly, what's coming up to me right now as we're reading this chapter is verse 2. Many are saying of me, God will not deliver him. And I'm thinking about it, and the context that we just gave, that Gabe right enlightened us with. It's funny how people think that God will not deliver David, and it turns out that I feel like they might think that way because they have the high ground in a sense. They have the palace. They have they have the people of the capital, and David's off in the mountains. But what they don't realize is that David is exactly where he's been every time he's come near to God. The most near he's ever been to God in his relationship has been running away in the mountains, in caves, with a limited amount of people and limited resources. And so people think, oh, yeah, David's not getting out of this one. But yet he is closer to God now than he was when he was in the palace. Right. I feel like in a way, it kind of teaches me a lesson of saying like, oh, things are looking awry, things are looking bad.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's like, where am I? What matters? Where I am geographically, where I am in my ladder of success, or where I am in nearness to God.
Mm-hmm.
And so I love that David is so confident in this psalm, because he's like, no, I am where I've always been,
Wow.
nearest to God.
Wow. That's interesting too, that he can still feel like along those lines, right? It doesn't matter if he's in the palace as the king, right, in control of his situation, or on the run again. He still feels, like you're saying, secure. And I think going back to Psalm 2, right, at the end of it, we were talking about that last verse, right? That's, blessed are all who take refuge in him. And we were talking like, it doesn't mean that there is nothing going around you, but you can still find rest in God in whatever situation you're in. So that's good. I like that. My thing, I think, is just it's fun. I don't know how to. I guess this is a conversation for us to engage in, right? I think, it's interesting always to see. I mean, to compare, right? Jesus's words of saying, and I preached a sermon a couple weeks ago on this, right? Of like loving your neighbor, but also how that goes beyond that to like loving your enemies, right? And like, someone slaps you on your right cheek, you turn to your left. You bless those who curse you, do good to them. And here we see David, though, and I don't know if it's it's a difference between like what you do privately versus publicly, right? Where in private you're praying like David, where you're like, yo, God, strike my enemies on the jaw, like punch them, like, knock their teeth out. But maybe in public you're being more, what I'm saying? Like, it's an interesting tension, because I know a lot of us have that feeling, right? Where we're in private, we're like, I just can't take this person or the situation or this thing that's going on. And then in public, you're like, okay, I can't really punch some. I can't really take this on myself, right? I don't know if you guys have a thought on.
Yeah.
Is there a balance? Is this like a thing of Old Testament versus New Testament, or is it like a private versus public?
I don't know, man.
Oh,
I want to say that the interesting thing about David is that, with him, I feel like in this situation, with him just saying the word and sending out the ravens, right? The Game of Thrones reference. He could have amassed a huge army and just like obliterated Absalom, no problem. And the reason why I say that is because David's probably the mightiest warrior that Israel ever saw
himself. Yeah, right.
And so he has this trajectory of saying like, nah, dude, this guy, this dude is a general. Like, you want to follow this guy.
Yeah.
And yet you see him doing the complete opposite of what people expect him to do, or what his, history would say that he'd repeat, he'd do again. And so I think that the fine line is like, yeah, are you able to kind of fight these things on your own? Sure. I think we're able to fight certain things on our own per se. But what's powerful about David is that he decides not to. It's like, I have the ability to, I have the resources to. How am I going to? And I'm just gonna rely on God for this. And I love it because he calls God, his shield, and it's like a wording of like, I'm on the defensive. I'm just gonna like, so kind of like, wear this out. Gonna figure this out, and hopefully he's still with the same mentality. Hopefully it'll blow over.
Dude, that's good, because it's because it's not like him saying, I'm gonna go out and strike my enemies on it. It's like I think it's kind of like what we live in, right, in the tension now of what we've talked about before, like even social justice, where we know we're gonna be persecuted, oppressed, put down, but it doesn't negate the desire and the call for justice and action that we pray for and that we publicly exonerate, right? So it's like, when things go wrong, I know this is part of life, but I'm also going to speak out against it, right? And I think this is David speaking out against this injustice and saying, God, where is your justice? I need you to come through and really act on my behalf, because like I like that, right? I can fight in my own armor and my own strength, and David for sure was what was it when they would talk about Saul, right? Saul would kill thousands, and he would kill 10,000s, right? I mean, he's the one that killed Goliath. So if anyone could like really, I think of what's the girl's name from Game of Thrones? I forgot. Arya. I think of Arya, right? Just like the trained under the faceless people. I don't know what they call it. I forgot.
No name.
No names. So
I think I think that's while that's true, all of that about David. I
But
think at this point in his story is a little bit different. I know that in the transcourse of the events, as Absalom takes the throne and David is kind of like pushed out and on the run, Absalom starts fulfilling like the duties of the king. He would hear the cases that the people would bring, and as he begins to judge upon them, the story tells us that Absalom wins over the hearts of men. Like he won over the hearts of the men of Israel.
Right.
And then that's again repeated when the messengers go to David and they tell him like, yo, Absalom has won the hearts of the men of Israel. So it seems like, number one, almost the entirety of the nation has turned against David. And then that can kind of tell you why he begins the psalm with, how have they increased who trouble me?
Right.
So he's probably saying this after he hears the report from the messengers about all the people that are turning to Absalom's side.
That's good.
And then I want to just say the verse that David mentions here, God as his shield. At least at that point in time, like the warriors would go out, and you see this a number of times, especially in Samuel's writings, where the warrior would go out, like Jonathan on one occasion, and also even Goliath, as he's described going out. They'd have someone hold their shield, and the shield bearer would be in front of them.
Right.
And then the warrior would be just behind with, whatever weapon they have, like a spear or sword or whatever it may be. And so even if it's on the offensive, this is how the battle would, take place. It would ensue. Right. So I don't know if David is, on the defense here or on the offense, but there's some kind of a surety, sense of security that he has, even while almost all of the nation has turned against him. Like there's some sense of security to the point where he says in verse 5, I laid down and slept. Like,
yeah.
Like what? Wait a minute. Like on the eve of,
this
battle, let's say, or destruction, like you're sleeping, bro. Like, what are you doing? So it almost seems like it's a contradiction as well, because the verses before, he's so all anxious and nervous, and rightly so. Most of the army has betrayed him, and he's just got like his loyal, 30 men that are always by his side. But he's also like sleeping and resting in the assurance of God's, mercy towards him, and sovereignty as well over everything. So I don't know, man. Like this text, this psalm is just like riddled with like trouble and also assurance and anxiety, and then it's weird. And I would say just to mention that David, though his ability, and I don't know how old he is at this point. If I'm assuming he's a little bit older now. And I know that there was one point that the soldiers, particularly Joab and his other generals, ask him not to go out to battle anymore.
Yeah, right.
Because they're afraid that he's gonna die.
He's old.
So I don't know if this is at that point yet, but in the battle he is asked not to go out, and the ones that kind of like secure the victory are his generals. So even with a small amount of soldiers, he's still able to, get the victory.
Yeah. I mean, knowing David's story, I would argue that the reason that we don't want you to come out is because you're a bloodthirsty savage, and you're gonna want to go like in the front line, like damage. And people say we can't afford you dying, or getting some kind of serious injury, or people,
Mm-hmm.
having this gossip of maybe that your death did happen when it didn't, and then that would just like
Yeah.
kill us.
Mhm.
Uh, I want to go back to this thing, Seba, that you mentioned, right?
Mhm.
Where they used to saying like, "Oh, Saul has killed thousands, but David has killed 10,000s," because you see that mirrored here in verse 6, where it says, "I will not fear though tens of thousands assail
Yeah.
me on every side." And so, imagine what's going through David's mind right now as he's like, "Yo, God, what the heck? Like, you gave me the strength to kill 10,000s, and now
Oh,
10,000s assail me. Like,
right. Right.
what's going on here?"
Mm-hmm.
And so I already see like this assurance that Gabe was talking about as well, because everything that he says that he has is coming from God one way or another.
Mm.
Healed, God; glory, God; being able to lift his head on high, yep, that's because of God.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and just like all these answers that he's getting, and being able to lie down and sleep, yeah, dude, the anxiety that all these things are happening, being able to have rest is not something that's normal, especially for someone going through that. And so he's saying, yeah, Lord, you're the one that gives me sleep and wakes me up. And so when he gets to this point of like, yo, there's tens of thousands on every side,
Mm-hmm.
um, I'm still assured you made me, you gave me the strength to kill 10,000, you're gonna give me the strength again.
Right.
Yeah. And it seems like this psalm, like this is like David's, like, I don't know, is he writing in his journal? Like this is
Right.
like this is on the eve of
Well,
of
yeah. At what point?
battle, and this is my last journal entry or something. But it's interesting to see David's reaction to everything that's happening. Like this is like he has time to write
Right.
and
On
to
the run.
compose
That's a good point.
specifically. Um,
That's a good point.
at all the chaos that's happening, he makes time to to do this, to write this psalm.
Hmm.
So it's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
I find it interesting too. Like, I mean, and we'll see as we go into Psalm, right? How he seems, and you were, I don't know if it was Gabe. I think it was Gabe. Where you were saying how, in a lot of his Psalms, it seems like there's just, it just goes through different, I guess, highs and lows. Right in the beginning, it's like you just hear chaos and like desperation, anxiety. Like, yo, Lord, how many are my foes? How many rise up against me? Many are saying God will not. And then as he goes through that, it's like he's putting out there what he's hearing, right? In his, whether he's verbally doing this or like you're saying in a journal writing it. And as he progresses through that, he's working through these anxieties and emotions. He gets to the point where he really, verse 5, I lie down and sleep and I rest and I can take refuge in God. And it doesn't matter if I have 10,000 people around me, like I'm good. So it's crazy to see how like he in his prayers, and I think I see this in my life too, like the more you spend time obviously connected to God, but even in your prayers, right, focusing on his power. And I mean the cliche, right? Don't tell God how big your problems are, but tell God your problems how big your God is, right? It's just kind of this progression where he's going through this working of it. In the beginning, he seems like he's at a loss of hope, and at the end, he gets to the point where he's like, "From the Lord comes deliverance." And like you're saying, this seems to be when he's still on the run. Like he hasn't seen the end of the story yet, but he's already, able to sleep at night. And as a warrior, I got to stay up all night. Are raid parties coming? Are they going to take over? Are they going to kill us? He's like, I can sleep in safety because it doesn't matter if there's tens of thousands of people around me. I know God will deliver me. And he's like, may your blessing be on your people. So I think it's very interesting. And I think it's awesome for us because I think we do this on the daily, right? Where something happens, we get some news, for us, our church members, our board members, something happens in the meeting, our families, our neighbors, we get a payment that we didn't know we had to pay for. And it's like, we're good. And then we're like, God, how am I supposed? And then as the day progresses or as our prayer time progresses, we get like, oh, actually, no, God's got it. He's been with me the whole time, right? So to me, it's cool that someone that God considered, you could say a friend, but someone that, that had a heart like God, right? That though he failed and all that, he still, we can relate to him in that sense of, man, this is rough. I'm going through a rough time. But at the end, I think there's a part later on where he's really like, it seems to be he's speaking to his heart. I forget what psalm that is, but he says he literally says it's like, you know, and I said to my heart, wait for the Lord, right? So he's like having this internal dialogue with himself, like, it's okay, God has brought me through before, you know. I mean, he has amazing stories of David and Goliath, you know, killing tens of thousands of people, going from a shepherd to a king, so he can look back and say, God's done it before and I can do it, you know. He'll do it again. So it's interesting to see that, I guess, emotional progression.
I think so. I think that's also reflected in how the music is composed. This, of course, we don't know what it sounds like, or you know,
right.
You know, what the chords are or anything like that. But from the text, you'll see, you know, Selah 3 times at least appear, and we know that is most likely a musical note indicating that you're to rest, right? You're to pause, like a break of silence that's going to occur after that particular declaration. So it seems like David is trying his best to ensure that the reader or the listener of this particular piece is going to know, even within the music, that they're able to rest and they're able to, you know, to pause and to take a break, even, you know, on the eve of something that's, you know, going to happen that could be scary or, you know, distressing.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah, man. The last part here, verse 8, where it says, "May your blessings be on your people." I think that's interesting. You know, it's not like, "Oh, may your blessings be on your servant," or like anything like that. He ends like with people, and I think part of that is like if you go to Samuel and you read the story, is man, he really loves Absalom, right? And he wants him to be blessed, and he doesn't want any harm to come to him, no matter what the kid does, right? David just loves him intensely. And I like, I like how he goes from, oh, I will not fear, blah, blah, all this stuff. And then all of a sudden, and like the way that I'm reading verse 7 anyway, it's like, imagine, you know, all those like war movies, but like with like swords and whatnot, right? So you have like, I don't know, the Lord of the Rings, where you have like all the horsemen from wherever, I don't even remember. They're like wearing green. Yeah, Rohan, right. And you have like the king with his sword and smacking all the spears and whatnot, and the whole army, and he's like basically saying like, "Yo, arise! Like let's go kick butt." And Davis here, I feel like giving God a pep talk. The only army he has is God.
Right.
That's a good,
you know, and I think that's so awesome, like to speak to God that way, like, "Oh, arise, Lord," right? Instead of saying like, "Arise," was it Rohirrim? Was it?
Yeah, right there.
So I think that's super cool how he's speaking to God here, as though God is his army, like arise, like deliver me, let's strike the enemies in the jaw, let's break teeth, let's just like kick butt. And just the way that he speaks to God there, and then from there he shifts. When the Lord comes, deliverance. May your blessing be on all your people. Just hula, you know, just in case, like, you know, don't kill any other good people, but everyone else, like, obliterate them, you know.
Yeah.
That's good. That's good.
And it's interesting, obviously, because, you know, the command that, you know, David gives in the story is for no one to harm his son, Absalom. Like, he's like, yo, go out, fight the battle. But guys, if you see Absalom on the field,
don't touch him.
Don't touch him. Do not lay a finger on him.
Mine, I got him.
And it wasn't even because he wanted to, you know, take care of him himself. He wanted to spare him. Like you know, he makes this prayer at the end when, you know, they give him the news. He says, you know, if only it was me that died in his place.
It's kind of the prodigal son.
It's like, you know, a powerful statement to make coming from him. But that's another sermon for another day. But in this case, like you mentioned, you know, I think this is not just an appeal for God to arise as a general, right? You know, the Lord of hosts who's going to come in and fight. But I think it could also mean like arise as the judge, right?
Mm-hmm.
As the God who's going to come and, bring legal justice and, really handle the situation in its entirety, because David has to win the battle, but he also has to win back like the heart of the people so that they can know that he is able to lead them, that he has a moral leg to stand on. So he's going to have to rely on God totally to be able to convince the people of Israel that he is the rightful king, and he deserves to be there.
Yo, that's a good
that's like Revelation in a nutshell.
Yeah.
I wonder how much of this is as you brought up a great point, right? Where in the story he's actually like, I don't want you to kill him, where everyone else is like, yo, he's your honor is, out the window, David, because he took your throne, and didn't he sleep with the concubines? Like he just
he did.
He went to the palace and slept with David's own other wife. Yeah. And I think it also speaks to why he would want, as we were talking a little earlier with Brian, of why he would want God to act rather than him. I think it's also because maybe he doesn't trust himself, right? If he's led by his own anger, he could go and actually regret doing something that he doesn't want to do, right? He can get so caught up in that anger. And so that's why he's appealing to God. God, I need you to be the one that comes and works this out, because I know if I do it, God says it about him when he's wanting to build the temple. He's like, you're a bloodthirst, like your hands are bloody, right? And so his nature, his what he was, I guess taught to do after being a shepherd, to be a warrior, could have really easily come in, and he's like, I'm gonna go kill my son because he's the, And so I think it's interesting, even in that aspect. Maybe he didn't have that at the core of it, but I'm sure there's like this. Yeah. There's this idea. I know my pastor always mentions it when he talks about the first lesson that Jesus taught their disciples was self-distrust, and to not trust yourself. And I think that's very, I think it's a powerful thing, because when left to how we want to fix things or solve things or resolve issues, right? Many times we don't go about it in the right, maybe restorative, reconciliative way. And so I think it's I don't know if David was really feeling this. It seems like he was very merciful this whole time. He's older now, so he's learned from this, but I think it's also a lesson for us to, hey, you really got to let God deal with this, because many times the way we want to deal with it is not going to doesn't turn out to be the way that really, God desires it to be resolved. So
I'm wondering if David would have won the battle without Absalom having been killed. Right. I don't see any way, like at least from a strategic standpoint, like I don't see any way around him having to die, because it seems like once he's killed in the battle, all of his followers like lose the morale and the will to fight, and they just lay down their swords and surrender. So I don't know, man. I don't know if David is acting because he's afraid of how he's gonna react and how bloodthirsty he is. It seems like there's a pattern of hesitance in disciplining his children, because this whole thing started because he didn't want to discipline Amnon for raping Tamar. And then Absalom comes and kills him, and then he's unwilling to discipline Absalom then, and then again it seems like still
it's like it's too late now. The place is
So I think that perhaps you're right. There is like some kind of fear. I don't know if it's rooted in he's afraid of looking like a hypocrite, right? You just killed someone, and because you raped the wife Bathsheba, and then I don't know, man. But what's interesting is that this whole thing plays out where David gives the command, don't kill Absalom. Absalom is killed in a very, peculiar way, where he's literally hanging on a tree
from his hair, las greñas.
And then, he's killed. Like it's almost like there's an illusion there of Jesus hanging on a tree almost. And then, it literally saves that death saves the day. Like there's no more battle after that.
Right.
So yeah, it's an interesting scenario. I don't know what to think of it really.
Yeah. And then it's interesting too because if Absalom had all this support behind him, he could have gone out and just killed him. But then that just, it's kind of like the whole great controversy, right? God could have killed Satan from the beginning, but then there's always this doubt where like,
Well, I mean, even David, like the whole thing doesn't finish with Absalom's death, because even David at the end, when he's like giving the power over to Solomon, he's like, "Hey, make sure you kill this person and
Yep.
this, and this
I was just thinking that.
because they're gonna cause a bunch of trouble." It'd be nice if they do that for us as pastors. The conference hires you. Hey, once you come in, make sure you this and this and this person.
Make sure you baptize this person and this person.
No, I'm kidding. But with all honesty, I think that that's where this prayer comes in. From the Lord comes deliverance. May your blessing be on your people. He's asking, hey, God, arise, judge, but at the end of your judgment, may your people be able to rest in the fact that they are blessed, and that your will, whether you had to rearrange it a billion times because of our mistakes, has come to pass in the best way possible. And so I think that's what makes verse 8 so impactful, is like, yeah, deliverance did come right in the story. Maybe obviously David didn't know that yet, or how it would come, but and then he says, may your blessing be on your people. I think after that whole debacle, and when Solomon becomes king, yeah, man, the people of God are truly like significantly blessed above the nations around them.
Yeah, I think it shows a little glimpse of David's heart at this time. That he's able to think beyond himself, beyond his own safety and security, and think of the people, the nation at large. Like, yo, God, just as you said before, don't save me, but your people. After your judgment comes, whatever that looks like, the result of it, just make sure that the blessing is still there. So I think that's fantastic to see that there's leaders that are leading not for their own benefit, but for the benefit of the nation.
Yeah,
speaks to us today.
Yeah. Dude, I'm just caught up in this story, man. When David finds out that Absalom's dead, Joab gets upset at him, right? Because he's weeping, and they're like, "Yo." The whole army, the victory that day was turned into mourning. He's like, dude, we risked our lives for you, and here obviously it's a difficult situation because he's running for his life from Absalom, but at the same time, he kind of desires Absalom's safety more than his own, right? He's like, I don't care if I die as long as Absalom is okay. And how like his I guess is an idea of to be mindful of the message that your actions send to those that you're leading. But it's a crazy mess, man. You're reading through it. Maybe we got to go into take a break from Psalms and jump into these the Samuel. There's a lot of good stuff here, man.
Sela, you gotta know, man. There's a lot of Psalms that were written by David. I don't know if we're gonna be able to go back to the story for all of them.
That's true. Yeah, I don't think they all. Yeah, all of them have that context. Some of them are kind of like Psalm 4. It's with stringed instruments. That's all.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's good. That's good. All right. I guess we're getting to this point here. I guess the big takeaway from us.
Yeah.
Big takeaway. Anybody?
Yeah, I'm just impressed at the sense of assurance that David has in God's protection over him. That in the midst of all this, family drama that's spilled over and into the national scene and has influenced politics, David can lay down and sleep and awake knowing that God is sustaining him. So, yeah, that's my big takeaway.
That's good.
Yeah. Along the same lines, a lot of what David is going through, a lot of what he's saying is based on his experience, and we try to find ways to like speak or say things like this, but if you haven't had that experience, it's going to be very difficult for you to fake these words out of your mouth. But I'm going to stick with that verse 6, the second half, because David showed that he was brave enough to follow God's timing when it came to going to war and killing the enemies of the nation of God.
Yeah.
But then he shows so much reliance also on God, not only in victory, but when it seems like defeat is certain, he has the same attitude of giving himself over to God and allowing God to work whatever it is that God wants to work in him or through him or at that present moment. And so, yeah, man, verse 6 talks about, the tens of thousands. I kill tens of thousands for you, God, and now tens of thousands surround me. And just like a completely reversal of like the situation that he's already lived, but still he looks to God to be that shield and that warrior and that judge for him. So, yeah, man, I like that. I like that a lot.
That's good. That's good. I think for me, I love what you guys are saying, but for me, I think it's just the whole of it, right? And I think that we'll see that through the journey of David through Psalm is just like the desire of God for us to be real with him, right? At least in the private times, right? So David could have easily, I guess in front of everyone been like, oh, we're all good because God is with us. But in that intimate, whether his journal entry, whether this was written later after, he had memorized these and then he put them into paper, however it was, in his private time, he was real. And he's like, God, like, there's many foes around me. They're going to rise up. They're all saying that God can't do it, but I trust in you. Right. So I think for me, it's like a desire that, when I feel like I can't do it anymore, really going to God and being real with him and finding that hope in him. So
yeah,
being afraid too. Yeah.
Yeah. I love that you mentioned that takeaway, man, because the whole thing is like verse 7 maybe is when he asks something from God, right?
Right.
For himself. And then he asks something for the community, for others. But the whole first 6 verses is just him speaking to God from a place of his heart, his emotions. And so it really shows us like how to effectively communicate with God.
Yeah.
And
really be and I think that's where a lot of his hope and confidence can come from, because he's actually vocalized it, verbalized it, and cried it out. And it's like, all right, God knows, and I know he's hearing me. I don't know how he's going to do it, but it's just that that really helps out.
I think what's interesting as well is that in verse 7, when God is called to arise, David says that God strikes the enemies on the cheekbone. Yeah. Right. So like, why the cheekbone? Like, why? This is like in the face, and he breaks the teeth of the ungodly. So it seems like after God's judgment, like the enemy, the wicked one is going to be unable to speak and pronounce like false testimony and come up with lies against David and against God as well. So it's cool that when God comes and judges, he takes away the ability of the enemy to,
that's good,
to do exactly what they were doing to David at the time.
Yeah. I thought you were going to go into one of those like deep conspiracy, about it. The jaw. Didn't Samson kill Philistines with the jaw? And David killed Goliath, who was a Philistine, and teeth are there's 32 teeth.
A tooth looks very much like a horn, and you know how it talks about all those horns and
Revelation talks about the animal and the jaw.
Think about teeth. There's 32 teeth. 3 times 2 is 6. You add 2 more 6s.
But Gabe, what you mentioned, man, that's good, bro. That's good.
Yeah, that's good word.
It just sounds like, bro, for you get hit hard enough on your jaw for your teeth to just like break, then your jaw just got shattered.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you guys have ever seen someone who had to have some kind of jaw surgery or a shattered jaw or anything like that.
That's tough. Like, can't even eat.
Like, bro, their whole mouth is just like metal and just a bunch of like racist looking thing. Like they just like, that's it, bro. You can't do anything but like try to slurp some food through a straw, and that's it. You know,
How would they do that? Would it be bronze or
and
brass or
they would have never been able to do that back then, bro. That's it. Like
gold?
you're jawless, man. All you can do is drink.
Yeah, yeah.
That's such an interesting desire for your enemies, right? Break their teeth.
He's basically.
I mean, it's number one, it's a knockout punch.
That's a good point. Yeah,
It's a knockout. It's a knockout blow. And number two,
first boxer in the Bible.
it disables the enemy from, you know, speaking lies and gossiping. And it seems like that's how it started with Absalom,
Right.
going
Right,
to
right,
you know,
that's good.
the gate and, you know, just listening and hearing all the complaints. And he probably fed into that. And, you know,
Yeah.
It's like how many, in verse 2, right? They're all saying God won't deliver, and so he's like, she'll shut them up. Like,
yeah, absolutely. Yo, look at
shut
that.
'em up. Boom. That's tough.
Yeah, man. And how are you gonna nurture yourself if you got a mouth to eat?
Yeah, the commander's not gonna sit there with a little wooden spoon trying to.
Yep.
You can't even say. Can you imagine?
Bueno, vamos a terminar, loco.
Oh, all right, guys. Well, thanks for joining us. Next week, Fridays at 10 a.m. or 10:30. We'll be on, guys. Thank you guys for tuning in. Share it, and we'll see you all next week. Have a great weekend.